I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 27. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Oh man, today is a great conversation that I am sharing with you guys. I hope you really enjoy it as much as I did. It's with Damon Pendleton, who is an attorney and happens to be a very savvy businessman. And it was great to talk to him about what he's built and what he's building and what he has his sights set on. You know, we talk a lot about growth mindset. We talk a lot about some key turning points for him in his practice, but really just his perspective. I think there's a lot to be taken away from his perspective that he offers in this conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. It is a long one, but I'm a fan of the long ones. For those of you out there who also listen to Tim Ferriss and Rich Roll and James Altucher, their long form interviews to me are some of the best. That they're the ones that I soak up the most from, and I really enjoy hearing the stories behind people. And so you'll get a taste of that with Damon in this interview. I am hoping to have him on a second time, especially because he has his sights set on some really big goals. And so it'll be really great to touch base on how those are going. Sometime next year would be pretty cool. But for now, please enjoy this fun, laid back, interesting conversation with this fascinating human. And, let me know if you can always go to speakpipe.com/velocitywork if you want to share what your takeaways were, what you enjoyed, what you want more of, what you want me to ask him next time. Leave those comments at speakpipe.com/velocitywork. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Velocity Work Podcast. I am super pumped that we have Damon Pendleton. Did I say Pendleton correctly? Your last name? Okay, sweet. And I have just been inspired by afar from Damon and got to have a conversation with him last week. And he was kind enough and gracious enough to give his time to come on the podcast this week. So welcome to the show, Damon.
Thank you. That was very nice.
Oh, well, I mean every word of it. And I would love if you, for those who are listening that might not know who you are, can you give a little bit of background about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, my name is Damon Pendleton. I'm an attorney. I have a law practice. I practice with my wife, Christina, and we are in Richmond, Virginia. Our practice focuses on two things primarily. It is traffic, so low-level criminals, speeding tickets, reckless driving, DUI, simple possession, and plaintiff's personal injury, and mostly vehicular accidents. We don't do a lot of med mal. We don't do a lot of products liability. And we have a little firm here. We have, that's who I am. That's the short story.
Okay, awesome. And so the other thing that strikes me about you, which I think is I don't know if it's rare, but I think it's unique, is that you right now currently have 5 locations, so to speak. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I'm working on number 6 literally as we speak. Hopefully I'll have a six location by January or February. But yes, we, personal injury is a little different as a practice because everything is scheduled out in such a way that you can practice statewide. And we've always kind of handled personal injury cases statewide. Obviously, being closer to our clients helps in terms of getting clients, but some clients will get in an accident, across the state. They come back to Richmond or near one of our offices and they want a local attorney, even though the accident took place, 3 hours away. So, but we always wanted a presence around the state. So we originally, like I said, started in Richmond, Virginia. That's kind of always been our headquarters. And we built up the traffic practice for like the first 4 years of the practice. And in order to do that, we kind of went to the jurisdictions around Richmond. And then once we kind of grew as much as we could in that area, I remember I spent 4 months. I would get up on Monday morning at like 4 a.m. and I would drive down to Southwest Virginia, which is down towards Roanoke, if you know where that is. And I would kind of go to those courts and stay at some kind of flea bag hotel for the night, and then check out on Thursday morning, go to court, and then drive back. And it took about 4 months before everything was kind of smooth. And, we had kind of opened up that office, and then I hired an attorney and she took over, and we haven't had a lot of turnover down there. It's been great. And, so we did that there. And then every year we would kind of come up with like, what's going to be the thing we do this year. So we did that 1 year. Then the next year, I think we opened up Virginia Beach. And maybe we took a little break as far as opening up offices. And then more recently, we've opened up office in Petersburg, which is in our same DMA. It's like 35 minutes south. And then we just opened up an office in Chesterfield, which is a county kind of to the south of us. So, and hopefully by January or February, we will have an office in Norfolk. I have a contract out on a building down there. We kind of really want to set up shop down in that area as well. So, yeah.
Chesterfield is still Virginia?
Yeah, that's Virginia. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's okay. Because I have a good friend from Chesterfield, South Carolina, which is super tiny. Okay, so I didn't know if it was
Chesterfield. It's kind of like Richmond is surrounded by two counties, Henrico, Chesterfield. So it's kind of right to our south. It's just, it's for local clients who just don't want to drive like all the way into the city. They just want to go somewhere closer to them, just to make it more convenient for clients.
Okay. Yeah. So I think one of the reasons I think that's so unique is that, well, not that I think it's unique. It is unique. A lot of people have one location. Sometimes they have two. Sometimes you see more, but it's not all the time that you see that, especially in the owner attorney world. It seems like everyone, they stick with one, maybe two. And so I'm glad to talk to you today because I have consulted with practice owners of 5 locations, and it's a different game than having just one or two. And I think, so anyway, I'm just really interested in talking to you about some of the things you've learned, how you've what you had to overcome, because there's different levels of going from, it's almost like someone going from 250,000 to making 500 and then to making 750 and then to making $1 million. There's like different hurdles and it never gets easier.
Absolutely.
You just get different problems.
Yeah. Well, I heard someone say the other day that, it's easier. It's harder to run a 250 practice, 250K practice than a 500. And it just gets progressively easier the larger your practice gets. The problems change, but you kind of have more people to help. I don't know what's going on. You have more people to help solve those problems. So maybe I should say this. We have 11 attorneys. So it's me and my wife. And then we have 9 attorneys, and 4 of those are on the traffic and criminal side, and 5 of those are on the personal injury side. And it's kind of, we're all, obviously we share all the administrative tasks and all of that, but the processes, the procedures, everything that happens, it's, if it's a traffic or criminal case, there's a process and procedure for that. If it's a personal injury case, it's handled totally different. The cases are, extend much longer out on average. It's a long life cycle as opposed to a very short life cycle on the traffic and criminal side. So there's, as far as a team is concerned, there are 11 attorneys, including my wife and I. Then there's about 20 staff members, and they're kind of spread out in those offices, but Richmond is our headquarters. It's a lot of problems. It's not problems. There are obstacles, I'll call them, not necessarily problems. There's a lot of obstacles, and most of them, some of them, money solves a lot of issues. Like, money. If you have money, you can get the right case case management software. You can get the right phone systems. You can get the right tracking. You can, like we just recently hired a fractional CFO. So I can, I want to get a little more granular on the reporting. So thankfully, that can solve some of those problems. Now you still have like, HR issues and, for when are people eligible for 401k and, who's coming, who's going. People are always, when you have a team of 30, I would like to say that there's zero turnover, but that's just not how it works. There's constantly people, and we hire a lot of young, younger kids like fresh out of college. And some of them want to go to law school. So they'll come and they'll work for 2 or 3 years and then they'll go to law school. That's wonderful, but that means that there's always a constant cycle of 2 or 3 years where someone's off to law school. We have 2 individuals right now who both have been accepted to law school. They know that they're going to be leaving. So we know that we have about probably a 6 month or so, time frame where we have to hire and put someone in their place and train them and then cross our fingers that they work, that they work out as well as the people that they're replacing,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's a big I think people becomes the biggest issue or the issue that you have to, there's all kinds of obstacles, but if you forget your people, you screw yourself because and I think sometimes, not always, and you can tell you're super personable, but sometimes people who make the decision to get into business, the level of business that you're in, they would rather just work on the business, and they don't like the people side. It does not interest them, but they get themselves stuck where they have to either hire someone who's going to be nurturing to and for the people, or they've got to start making shifts so that they pay more attention to that. Because otherwise, you're only as good as your team, right?
I 100% agree. Yeah, any success that we've had is primarily as a result of a team. You can get only so far with yourself. My wife is savage. She can do so much stuff. like she can run an office, and the amount of productivity she has is amazing. But it's still a finite amount, you cannot get anywhere if you don't have a good team built out. And frankly, I would say that I would think that the hardest part of this entire, I'm with you. I agree with you. I would much rather be focused on the business and the marketing and reporting and like creating systems for this and that and, follow-up campaigns. All of that stuff gets me flowing much, much more than dealing with like, personal issues and so is, mad at so and that kind of stuff. And I don't have it figured out by any stretch of the imagination. It's a day-to-day struggle. I never know what I'm going to walk into. You can walk in the office today and they could have went out last. I'm talking about 2 of the staff members could have went out and kind of had a fight or had some kind of something happen. So there's some tension in the office and you have to kind of deal with those things. So, not a normal thing. We have a great team. But the hardest part, I think, of scaling a law firm, or at least in my experience, what has been the hardest part, and that may just be because of my skill set, has been to constantly hire, train individuals for your team to do well. I just did it's just ironic. Yesterday or day before yesterday, I'm sorry, I did a young woman who has been like a rock star. She is the ideal person that you want on your team. And she filled a position that previously I had kind of 2 duds in a row. And I do all of the stuff that I do everything that people say. I do the testing. I do, I use, Jay Henderson. I use his test for the kind of profiling. I do multiple interviews. I do it all. I still get duds all the time. So I'm open. Anyone that's listening, feel free. Please reach out to me. Melissa, I'll take your advice as well. I can get much better at hiring for the team. But I got lucky with this young lady, and she is fantastic. And we were doing her annual review. She's been here for a year, and we were doing her annual review. And she's like, hey, I'm a lifer. Like, I really want to stay here forever. So, we were just, she's like, you don't have anything to worry. We talked about some things, what could improve, what could, little things, tweaks and stuff. Not that it's perfect, but she was like, but she's probably the first person that came and said, yeah, I'm here for life. Like, I love this. And I'm like, okay, whatever we did with her, we have to try to recreate it with other people.
Doesn't that feel so good?
That felt really good. Yeah. Because I felt I'm not going to take her for granted, but it's one of those things where, and she's that type of person. She's the type of person that, she just does her stuff. Whether, you don't have to like look over her shoulder. You don't have to check behind. You can look at, certain metrics and things, but, people that just do what they're supposed to do, kind of manage themselves. They act like adults. It's amazing to me how infrequently I see that, I guess is the word. It's interesting.
Yeah. It is interesting because I think there are examples of her, which, everybody, if you're lucky enough to get one of those, which by the way, you won't get one of those unless you're nice. So people who are jerks at the office, those people don't stick around.
Yeah,
but
right.
If you, so that says a lot about you and your wife for sure. But awesome. The other thing is that a lot of people that have that they strive for excellence with whatever they're doing, a lot of them have ambitions to do something on their own. And so it's tough to find the person who that's not what they want. They just want to show up and do a great job and feel like they're a part of something. And so, there's that's really cool that you find, and not to say that there aren't a lot of great people out there. I think that there are a lot of great people out there.
Absolutely.
But to your point, you keep trying to get better and better at hiring and onboarding, and that's an evolution in and of itself for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so the more that you do that, you start to realize how rare it is. Like these are diamonds in the rough that sometimes you will get. And
yes. And we were lucky. That particular person came from one of our, probably the largest PI firm in our market. And in the state actually, and she was there, and she was willing to be a lifer there, but they just wouldn't listen. They wouldn't listen to her concerns. She was clearly a good person, clearly a excellent member of your team. I mean, the ideal of what you want. And she kept giving them feedback, and they, larger organization, they didn't hear it. It went in one ear and out the other, and they were just like, yeah. Much bigger than us. They had, her big thing is she wanted to move, and do some different work than they had her doing. And they were big enough where, like I said, if she comes to me and says, I want to do something else, I'm going to do all I can to make it happen, because you don't get people like that. And you definitely don't get people like that all the time, just doesn't happen. Well, it hasn't happened to me yet. I'm hoping that 2020, that's all I'm going to hire.
Yeah, exactly. But the other thing that's worth mentioning here, which I think that you've probably seen a little bit of, is one of them inside of a team of, 6. Let's just, if she works in a small unit or whatever.
Sure.
I mean, the ripple effect of that one person is huge inside your organ. Even if not everybody else is her or sort of strives to be her, she sets a standard and is an influence inside your organization. So having one among many is powerful.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And as most of us have seen at some point in time, that flip side where you have the toxic person and how they affect an organization can be just as influential, because, I've had times where, because things are so crazy and, oh my gosh, I just hired this person, but I see that they're toxic, but I still wait too long to kind of cut the cord. I've been there too. So, I just say I've probably made I know there's some more, so I can't really say that, but I feel like I've made every mistake in the book, getting from 1 to 30, from a team of 1 to a team of 30. I've made every mistake in the book, and I'd love it if I wasn't going to make a bunch of mistakes going forward.
Right.
Chances are I'm probably going to make a whole bunch more, but I'm just trying to, get better about them, vet them a little better.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about progress, right? Not perfection. Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
Well, okay. I kind of dug into the 5 location thing, and soon to be 6, but I would love to know, when did you graduate law school, and where did you graduate from?
I went to North Carolina Central, which is down in Durham, North Carolina. I graduated in '08. My wife was a year behind me, and we started like getting serious. We didn't date all through law school or anything. We saw each other. We were friends. We waved. And we got serious about 6 months before I graduated. I went to law school later in life. I think I went to law school when I was like 31. So I was graduating when I was 34. My point is that by then I kind of knew like what a good woman was. Not to, I know this isn't that type of podcast, but I kind of knew like this is a woman that's worth waiting for. So I hung back and I waited for her to graduate, and just kind of did odd stuff while I was there. And then we weren't sure. Her family, my wife's Korean, so her family, they were kind of about to disperse, and they were living in Cary, North Carolina, and I said, why don't we come back to Virginia, which is where my family was from. We knew we were going to have a family. We wanted that extended family thing. But we weren't sure about working in D.C., where I'm at, where my family is, about an hour north of me. Most of the people kind of commute back and forth to D.C. So we kind of played that role of like working in D.C. while we were trying to figure things out. Ultimately decided that probably wasn't the kind of where we want to raise a family. So we really started practicing in 2010. That's when we came down to Richmond. We both got jobs at different firms. And we both worked she worked at a firm doing traffic and criminal, surprise. I worked at a firm doing plaintiff's personal injury, which was all I ever wanted to do. I told you I was a claims adjuster for Geico for 5 years before I went to law school. So I was very familiar with that. That's all I wanted to do. I knew I had to do something else. I always said when I was going to law school that I'll do anything but criminal defense. But I love doing personal injury. But most of the time, personal injury is kind of up and down. And most people I knew who had started firms, they had some second thing that was kind of a little more regular money. They either did family law or criminal or something like that. I tried to do family law. I took one client. I fired him. I said, this just isn't, this just isn't for me. You can have your money back. I found him another lawyer that wanted to handle those kind of cases. But because of my wife's doing the traffic and criminal stuff, I said, okay, this might be the other thing, because it's not like I don't have to go to court and worry about somebody going to jail for life or something like that. It's kind of low stress. And it's a very quick life cycle, which is very important to me in business when the other side is this, is it going to be a year? And then your larger cases might take 2 years or 3 years. So it worked out really well. So we both worked for somewhere for like a year. My wife, basically, I was doing plaintiff's personal injury work, so I was kind of making more money. So I said, start the firm, please, Christina. And as soon as it's time, I'll come over. We kind of followed what I'll call is like a plan. It just worked from the beginning, basically. It worked from the beginning. So I think a month into it, I told my then boss that I was going to be leaving in about a month. I help him, he could hire somebody else, give him some time, and I was going to clean up as many cases as I wanted. And then, so a month later, I came over, and then it was me and her, and then we hired, a young lady for the front desk, and we took it from there. In the first 4 years, we were just, I wasn't advertising. I guess the way to say it is the first 4 years, I was not advertising for personal injury cases. I was just getting referrals I left on good terms with my old firm. He was a large advertiser here in the city. So he was sending me cases, and other friends that knew what type of work I did was sending me cases. So I had like a little personal injury practice on the side while we were building up the criminal practice. Then after about 4 years, we decided that I always wanted to do it. It was just a good time. It was a good time. Like I said, the first couple of years, it was open this office, open this office, open this office. Then once we got geographically where we wanted to, it was, we went on television in the Richmond market. And, that was, that's a serious financial commitment when you decide to do that. And you have to have systems in place. And, now you're talking about having people to do intake and investigators to go out and sign up people and ways to get medical records and, so anyway, that's kind of
okay. So I definitely have questions from what you just said.
Sure.
When your wife started her firm, or the initial one, so that was 2011.
2011, yes.
Okay, and you started to say something about we followed a plan. And then you said, well, it just worked. Like, what? Say, what were you going to do there?
So what I was going to say was this. One thing, especially in this digital world, I'm always, one thing that's never discussed is direct mail as a source of getting cases. And it doesn't, does it work for everything? No. But when you think about it, if you're handling criminal cases, or if you're handling, like I said, in this case, criminal and like traffic infractions and stuff like that, you can essentially buy a list of everyone who needs your services or who may need your services and send them a letter. And I mean, it's my favorite. It's literally my favorite form of advertising because it's so direct. It doesn't get any more direct. We do advertising for personal injury cases, and we just go out to, we want to blast to 1 million people in hopes that a couple of them, get this. Or we do PPC advertising and we say, okay, well, this person is searching for this term, so we want to try to attach to that. But I don't know. Direct mail gets lost in the mix. And I think it's kind of old school. It's kind of like, everybody's into the digital, everybody's into this. But, we have letters that have just generated so many cases and so much income over the last 8 years and all we do is mail it out, We send it in the mail. We put a stamp on it with a letter and we mail it to them and they call us.
And so that's how you built the first.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
The rest of it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that.
I also agree that it's not talked about enough because the consulting firm that I used to work for, they were a $75 million company and direct mail was their jam. Like that is how they got business. That's and awesome. I think, we kind of had a reputation for it. Clients would be like another thing in the mail or another, but it was, that's what worked. Yeah. Our marketing budget was a little bit bigger than what I think a lot of companies set aside, but it's because they knew what lever to pull and they knew that it worked. And so they were willing to do it. And not many people talk about direct mail anymore. And I know like certain, I assume I haven't really given it a lot of thought, but I'm sure that, it is easier in certain practice areas than others, obviously. But I think that it probably could be utilized much better than in some practice areas where people are reaching for those digital solutions like PPC. And I'm not knocking PPC. I'm not, if you have a way of getting cases at a reasonable cost and it makes sense financially to your firm and you, keep doing it, pour gas on it, do what you do. But I think it's just overlooked. There's like totally not even a consideration. People go directly towards like SEO, web, digital stuff, social media marketing, and look right over direct mail like it didn't exist. And, as you said, it helped build a $75 million company, and it certainly helped build our firm. And it's still helping. Maybe one day they'll stop us from doing it, but until then, I think we'll continue doing it because it's working. Yeah, and you can be so personal with it. I think too, in just a different way. So was that advised to you, or did you guys just say, you know what, let's just try this out?
Well, so my wife was working somewhere who was doing it, so. That's what I mean when I say like it was kind of set for us like, oh, okay, all right, we have a framework for how we can make this work. So let's just try it. Let's just do it. And then at that point, you're just kind of crafting a message that you think is going to resonate for someone that got charged with whatever. Being involved in a bad accident or something, or someone that's got caught with marijuana, or someone who was arrested for a DUI or DWI, and we just craft a message for them, and we sent it out, and then we tried this and we tried that. It wasn't, I go deep dives when I'm going to get involved in something. I dive deep. So I'm pulling out all the old direct mail, pieces and reading all this stuff. And if truly, we could probably still get better because we didn't, really truly have like a control and then like kind of tweak one thing at a time and like constantly run them simultaneously. Maybe one day we'll get to that point where I can do that. But I'm looking at the numbers all the time, and it always worked. It always brought in cases. Always, the ROI was the biggest that we could get compared to all the rest of this stuff. So yeah, it worked well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you, and if not, that's totally okay, because I'm putting you on the spot with this. We didn't talk about this before the show, but do you, what's the right question to ask? Not what was your ROI, but like, what percentage of response did you get, or what, like, compared to other things you've done, especially is kind of what I'm thinking.
You don't get a high percentage of response, but it doesn't require a high percentage of response to get a high ROI. Basically. Because
it just doesn't cost that much to do.
It doesn't cost that much to do. I mean, you can reach a person that, to send 100. Let's just do it this way. To send 100 letters costs $80 maybe. $80, okay. 80, whatever. And then I'm saying about 80 cents per letter. Cost about $80. And if you get a 3% return, let's say on a DUI case, and someone hires you and they pay you, whatever, $4,000. The ROI works out well. It doesn't have to be a big return. So that's the thing to think about. And trust me, one thing that I've never really got caught up on, I don't know, it's probably more my personality than anything. A lot of people, there was a time in the law, and I'm in Richmond, Virginia, which is, used to be the capital of the Confederacy or something. It's very old school. like people here can be very old school. The law is very old school. The state's very old school. And there are people who say, like, there was a time, I laugh when I hear them telling these stories. There was a time when it was considered to be a faux pas when you handed out your business card. Like, what are you, look at this guy. He's handing out business cards. God forbid when people started doing commercials and sending out letters and stuff. And there's still a huge faction of people who will say, oh, man, you guys are just like pariahs and you're this and you're that. I just kind of never meant anything to me. It's not, I don't put stock in those things. It goes in one ear and out the other because I'm building a business. And if, I get this crap in the mail from Verizon every day, or, Comcast or whoever, if they can send me stuff in the mail, I don't have a problem with, doing it for my professional services. But, everybody's different on that. And if you have some kind of moral, something that doesn't allow you to do it morally, which I'm telling you, there's plenty of attorneys that are like that, then, they got to find something else, I guess.
I guess that is true. But to me, running a business is like, if you're going to run a business, then you've got to, you have to go on facts and not feelings. And you need to be able to line yourself up with success, whatever that means for you. And I know that definition does definitely vary from business owner to business owner, but I hear what it's almost like, keep your pride, man. Okay, I'm gonna do whatever because ultimately the end result is helping someone. It's not like you're trying to lure them into something that they shouldn't be lured into.
Yeah, it's not a bait and switch. It's not
no,
absolutely. I think it's good when we can help people and on both sides of it, I think we're helping people. So but I'm telling, for many years, I'm not so much now. I don't go to court anywhere near as much as I did at the beginning, but for many years, I was the person that was there with my, handling my case or cases and, hearing the whispers, that guy, he's advertising for cases. It's 2011, wow. 2012. Yeah, I'm advertising for cases.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's like that everywhere. I'm literally just, I'm just talking about some things that we experienced here in Virginia. So, yeah.
Well, okay. What, so 2011, you started, the first firm was started.
Sure.
The first location was started. Yeah. Then when was the second one open?
I should probably know this better, but I'm looking forward most of the time. So probably about not more than 18 months later. It had to be enough time for us to just kind of get our, get our feet in the ground, get the processes right. So I would say probably year probably between 18 months a year, 18 months to 2 years, somewhere around there.
And then what about after that?
Well,
did it speed up?
Okay, no, it did.
Uh-huh.
And that was interesting. What had happened was I wanted to open an office in Virginia. That's Virginia Beach. So I wanted to open an office down in that area. And the woman who was running that Southwest office, our second office, it's kind of down in the Southwest. The Southwest part of Virginia is kind of rural. It's like coal country. You just gotta go. There's a couple of colleges there though. There's Virginia Tech is there, and Radford is there, Roanoke College. So anyway, there are a few colleges. So she was only there because it's hard to find people there. That's my point. So she was only there because her husband was like at one of the schools getting like a CPA, becoming a CPA or something. So we knew that she was only going to be there for a while, and we got lucky in that she wanted to move. He got a job in the Virginia Beach area, and she wanted to move there, and she liked working with us. So she helped a great deal when we opened up that office. Okay. Couple, 2 years, maybe a year or two later, we opened up that next office. Then we kind of, at that point, Virginia's kind of, I consider it like four portions. There's Northern Virginia, which is the DC suburbs. And then if you keep going, you eventually get to what would be, a metropolis for Richmond. Then you have out east, which is Virginia Beach. And then you have the southwest portion, which we have an office in. So we really, at this point, cover kind of 2/3 of the state. And we just aren't in Northern Virginia.
Okay, cool. So, and when did you open the fifth one? It
was much longer because the fifth one is
like, how new is it?
Maybe 2 years ago, I think. Maybe about 2 years ago, we opened up the fifth one. That was for the fifth office for us. It was the 1, 2, 3, or the fourth. It was the fourth. Well, for us, it was the first time we had an office that essentially was in the same DMA. It's only 35 minutes from our Richmond office. So now we're just talking about trying to pick up more clients that are closer to that particular office. And in the last two offices that we've opened, that has been kind of the situation. We're no longer just trying to like enter into a new market. We're kind of in a market and we're just trying to get a little bit more, I don't even want to say saturation because we're a long ways away from that, but, make it easier for clients to pick us. Those clients who may say, I know you, but I don't want to drive all the way to, 30 minutes to come into the office. Now we have investigators. We send them out. We can use e-signatures. We can do all that kind of stuff. But some people just, for them, they want their attorney to be on the way home from work or between work and home. So that's kind of what we were picking up.
Okay. Yeah. So between 2011 and 2017, you opened 5.
All but the last one, the fifth one has been like something that we did like 6 months ago. So
cool.
We did 4 from 2017 and then one just 6 months ago.
And then the 6th will be 2020.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I mean, we haven't really talked about it, and I don't, people use the law for a bunch of different things, I'll say, right? And for us, I think that but when you want to grow a business and that kind of thing, we want to use it as a kind of a wealth building type of thing for the Pendleton family. So, we own several of these offices. So and we kind of, we own and lease. It creates a different business because now you're in the property management business and you have tenants and stuff like that. But
that's how you create real wealth. So
exactly. I was a couple of years ago. I was with the guy who gives us advice, and he's like, "Oh man, so you're trying to do like a McDonald's thing, huh?" And I'm like, "Huh?" He's like, "You kind of like want to, own these properties and kind of ride along with them." I'm like, "Yeah, the McDonald's thing, if that's what you want to call it." But it's again, it's a different it's a different business. Now you're not practicing law. Now you have to worry about, when the roof is out and the HVAC system goes out and all that kind of stuff. But I consider, this is all just kind of part of what we're doing, which is that's why I was saying like in the Norfolk thing, we got to offer out because we're going to buy a building and there's other tenants and we're going to be one of them, and we'll be, we have a little arm that manages all the facilities and that kind of stuff. So anyway, that has worked for us over time.
So, okay, thinking back, and because I'm thinking about the people that I have the pleasure of working with, and probably a lot of people listening to this, I think it's all over the map in terms of if people have a vision or if they don't, all that. And so did you from the get-go, like even if it wasn't crystal clear, you knew you wanted to create a bit of a legacy for your family, for your
absolutely.
Like you knew you were going big.
That was the idea. The idea was to continue to grow. I think. Look, okay, it's interesting. I was in we had like an informal mastermind a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not going to tell anybody's private secrets or anything, but but one of the people involved in it, who will go unnamed, is older, let's say 65 or something, and has multi-million-dollar practice, and everybody. Several of the people, I won't say everybody, it wasn't a lot of people, but several of the people are like, hey, you need to do all these things. You need to create these processes. You need to. And one person, I thought it was very insightful of him. One person sat back and was like, no, man, if I was 65, I wouldn't do I wouldn't do that. I would just, you got a good thing going. Why do you want to do all this stuff to build this thing? And then you're probably going to be gone in 3 or 4 years anyway. That makes no sense. You should. And I thought about it. I was like, he's right. He honestly is right. Unless you plan on doing this until you're 80 or something, what's the point? Anyway, I say that to say that my wife is 8 years younger than me. So I just felt like, I guess you could cruise, but I just think growth is important. I think if you're going to be around, then build whatever you want. For me, growth was very important. I wanted to grow every year because I figured I was going to be doing it for a certain period of time, and I didn't want to just kind of stay stagnant. And it's diversity, the larger we've gotten, I can seize opportunities that present themselves much easier today than I could, when we were one office and, 5 people or something like that. You get, things come across my desk and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I like this. That looks like a good opportunity. And then I can make it work inside this little thing that we're creating,
And that's because of your commitment to growth.
Absolutely.
Because if you weren't, then you'd still be in some place where that opportunity was't possible for you.
And I really worried that if we stayed in this one little market doing this one little thing, we can dominate it. We could dominate it. But I'm like, what if something, changes? What if some type of external force, the legislature gets together and makes up some crap every year that, they give and they take. What if they change the rule? For instance, something I probably agree with politically, but if we set ourselves up to be, we are the marijuana guys, we're the guys that you come to for da-da-da-da, and then they make marijuana legal, then where does our business go? And I never wanted to be I'm just using that as an example. But I never wanted to be or I won't say I can still be in a situation. I wanted to do some things that I wasn't totally dependent that if you knock that out, then maybe I got this over here. And if you knock that out, then maybe I can pivot and do this over here. So, that's part of the reason why I think growth is important. But it depends on what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that's so true. I think that's also there's a couple different reasons to get into real estate, but that's not only you're just diversifying where all your money's coming from, which is smart because you're right. You can't control the world. And so if something were to happen in an area or two that for your income streams, you've got other ones. And I know saying that out loud, there's probably some people who are at the earlier stages of starting out their own thing, and it feels so beyond what they can see right now.
Sure.
But I do think it's important to think that stuff through because you can dedicate your life to one thing and one thing only. Mm-hmm. And that is, it may seem safe, but it's actually the opposite of safe to do that.
Absolutely.
So I just think I really have a lot of respect for, and I'm glad this stuff is coming out because there are reasons like maybe I couldn't have articulated very well at the beginning before this conversation, but there are reasons I wanted to talk to you. And it's this stuff. Like it takes a certain kind of person to build what you've built and to overcome your fear to do like half the stuff you've done. Like that was, probably felt super risky, probably was super risky at certain points. And you're finding your way. Like you don't allow the I don't know how to get in your way. You just keep pushing through. No. Yeah, I think that's so cool. Okay.
Again, you have kind things to say, Melissa. I'm going to make sure my wife listens to this.
Oh, I was just thinking, why I should have her on too, because
if you can get her to stop, good luck if you can get her to stop for an hour.
That's fair, but you talk about how superwoman and savage she is, and it makes me want to talk to her.
She's awesome. She's awesome.
Yeah, I bet she is.
Yeah. There's she plays as big a role as anything in terms of what we've built here. But what was really cool and it happened organically is that we learned that we really enjoyed and we really excelled at different things. And she was really more into the more granular day-to-day, like boom, boom, the boots on the ground that is required, like the blocking and the tackling. It's required. You can't, you're not going to move this thing at all if you don't have someone working on those things. And at first, don't get me wrong, we all were, at the beginning, we were all blocking and tackling.
Everybody's doing everything.
Yeah, everybody's doing everything. You take every role on. But, kind of as we grew and we had to start kind of not doing as much as we were before, we it just organically occurred that it kind of happened that she really liked these things and I really like those things, and they complemented one another, but they weren't the same thing. And it turned out really well. Or it makes us work well together, I should say.
Yeah, which is awesome. And by the way, every time I'm saying you, because I am talking to you in this conversation, I really do mean the two of you. I don't mean to exclude her because I know. No. Because I do think that there's some power in the two of you together. That's Absolutely. Pretty clear. Absolutely. So okay, so you've built what you built. You're going to continue building.
Sure.
And in different ways, not just law, like you said, Absolutely. Real estate's something that you're dealing with more now. So Absolutely. Tell me, if you can see if anything comes to mind when I ask this question, what were some of the key turning points for sort of unlocking the next level of growth? Like, and I don't necessarily mean mindset, although you could totally share that. Yeah. But like, what things did you do that it was like, oh my God, I'm so glad we did that?
Well, definitely opening up new offices in like totally different markets. That was one thing that like I would look at our P&L, check our balance sheet out. I would look and see kind of where we were in terms of market share as best you can, as best you can with certain things. I was looking and I was kind of like, look, I can keep pressing this thing. I mean, either I'm going to be the only one here at court and you know what I mean? And that's never going to be the case. Or we need to find somewhere else to do this. Like sometimes you kind of hit a cap in which you can do. So you're like, okay, you can either get more clients, raise your fees. You have to start figuring out what you're going to do. But there tends to be sensitivity to all those things. If you have more clients, then it normally takes more time on the back end to work all that stuff. Fee, and then, price elasticity. At some point in time, you just kind of priced everybody out of the market, depending on what you're doing and how much you're going to charge somebody for a speeding ticket. You know what I mean? So,
right.
You got to look at things realistically, right? So looking at that, I'm like, okay, I don't think it's just not it's not a market share play. It's not like, can we get more and more market share? It was like, okay, we need to just find another market. That's the thing. So I would say that originally it was kind of looking, and because we had a growth mindset, it was, okay, we're both relatively young. Like, what's the next thing? Like, we're not going to just, rest on our laurels on this. So we would pivot and we opened up the next office that was in Southwest Virginia. And then the exact same thing happened. We were always looking like, when can we, the same thing is going to happen here that happened there. So when that happens, what's the next thing? And then we opened up the Virginia Beach. And then at that point, the next step was, okay, we've maximized this. I've been getting referrals, but I always wanted a PI practice anyway. And then we went on television. Like I said, I don't know if I mentioned, but like I said, we are a personal injury firm that advertises on television.
Yeah.
Again, everybody's same conversation. With the worst people in the world advertise on television.
But, yeah.
They can't be great attorneys if they're on television. All this other stuff. Television doesn't work. Everybody's cutting the cord. I don't know.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on and on. And by far, in terms of that practice area, television today produces cheaper cases, per case value, and the ROI has always been higher for us than any kind of digital marketing.
To me, I just this is something I need to work on myself. I don't have patience for conversations that don't involve data. And so when people say, like all those things that you just said people had to say about TV.
Oh yeah.
What are you going on? Because the person who's winning, is going on numbers, and I just don't have tolerance for people's I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. You tune those people out. I tuned them out. You tune them out. There's no reason to sit around. I'm not going to ever sit around and have a conversation with people who tell me things can't be done that I've done or I'm doing. You know what I mean? That's not like a
or if someone tells you something's a bad idea, you want facts that it's a bad idea. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So but that was the next thing for us. That was
a turning point.
That was a turning point, a huge turning point, because now we essentially were able to grow that practice area, which is the largest. It's like 65% of our practice now is personal injury, 35% is the traffic and criminal stuff.
Okay.
And so the next general stage is to do the exact. It's almost. It's not the exact same thing, but it's very similar. That you get to a point where you think you have a certain amount of market share. And you can just keep fighting for that market share in your market, or you can kind of sidestep and move into another market and see what you can do there. And you kind of, I don't think we've maximized everything that we can do here in our Richmond DMA, but I think it's a good time for us to start that process because, like I said, PI is a it's a long life cycle. So you got to kind of get it going and get your name there and get the repetition because it takes a while. And these things are very, they are growth eats cash, I guess is what they say.
Oh my gosh. That was my next question.
Yeah.
That was my next question because I think I meet a lot of attorneys who they do have visions of grandeur. Yeah, they know what they want to work toward. And it's almost like there's no perfect recipe for success. And I know that. And I would never pretend that there is one, but it seems like there's oftentimes people are jumping a little too soon where they don't have systems and processes in their current practice. And so it's kind of a mess. It brings in good cash, but their house isn't in order and they want to jump to the next thing. And it takes so much convincing to talk them off the ledge of just get your house in order and then go fly, man. But don't just jump. And so I'm curious, you've mentioned systems and processes, that's something you guys worked on with. So
it's constant, right? It's
constant. Totally.
I wish I could say that we are great at, we're good at it, but we're not great at it. And that's why I like to look at other firms and kind of peek behind those who will let me. Most of the time, if someone has in my experience at least, a lot of people who run really good firms who aren't your direct competitor, they welcome you to come because they're proud, they're proud of what they did. We're scheduling to go to another state and look at someone's firm because, they're look, you know what I mean? And when I see it, that's what motivates me because I say, dang, I got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of work to do.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I got a lot
and I don't think, some of the best companies in the world, you look behind the curtain, you're like, damn, this isn't so pretty. But exactly. I do. So I guess it's not all about systems and processes, but also I think the other flip side of things is stability from a cash perspective.
Sure. Absolutely.
Before you jump. And
Absolutely.
I am curious, I don't even know necessarily the right question to ask you, but like, what indicators
Mhm.
existed that you knew like, no, let's like move forward. We could totally do this. Was it a percentage of profit margin? Was it
Yeah.
like, what was it for you?
Well, I've mentioned that short life cycle on these smaller type of cases that are, like I said, for Virginia, it's called general district court cases. They have a shorter life cycle, which is what you want. Well, it's what I wanted because I knew I was going to be trying to build a personal injury firm. So I don't want to have something else that takes a year to get paid, 2 years to get paid. I want something where I can get paid in 30, 60, 90, very relatively quickly up front.
Yeah.
Here's the retainer, and I went to court. I handled the case. We did, got you off here. I collected, which you agreed in the retainer. So we wanted something fast. So that was part of it. Now, I will say that you never. I mean, part of it is just having the I don't know, man, the belief in yourself, the belief that you're going to figure things out as they happen. Because if you knew everything that was about to happen, you'd be like, maybe I don't want to do this. But because it took long, the cash took longer than I expected to come back on the personal injury side. We made, and one, I'll talk about mistakes. I could talk about those all day, but for instance, one mistake that we made when we started advertising on television is that because you're spending all this money every month on ads, you lower your bar. So, if the bar is right here on what you'll take, you start to get worried, like, is anybody else going to call this month after I spend this 5-figure check, So you're like, I'm going to take that. But those cases take forever to resolve, and they take, and they're not high value, or there's always like problems, you take problem cases that you otherwise wouldn't have taken. So, but then what happens is you gradually see that it just takes time. You have to let the process play out, and you raise the bar back. You deal with that a little bit, and you raise the bar back up, and you say like, oh, look, people do call. People are going to call. People are going to continue to call. We just need to convert, look at our conversion rates, answer the phone. And so that, I didn't anticipate, that was something that wasn't, I can't sit here and say, oh, I knew all this, no, not at all. I thought we needed the X amount of money to get us through this period of time. I knew we had another practice area that kind of generated cash flow. And it was just a matter of kind of playing that, playing with that along with, cost of your team, because you got to build your team out. And these cases are going to last for 10, 12 months, a year before you see money. But yeah, so you just got to figure, you kind of figure it out. And I don't, you didn't ask this question, but another thing, and we didn't do it then, but I don't think it's, people, the SBA, for instance, SBA has like a loan program where they love giving attorneys money, especially if you are like, got your books in order and stuff. And I don't suggest that people go out and like get money and all that kind of stuff. But I think that there is a time in every, I mean, if you look at, I like to look outside of our industry, for instance. Don't just look at the legal industry. Most of the time when you go to most businesses that built, 8 and 9 figure businesses, at some point in time, they did something. They might have went to capital markets and got debt, or, they do something. They do something.
Yeah.
But for some reason, a lot of people in the law, and this might not be yours, this is my experience. A lot of people are just like afraid of debt. Like they're afraid of taking on any type of debt.
Right.
Like I said, we didn't do it, at that point in time. And ultimately we ended up doing taking on a little bit when we purchased our building. But I mean, in the form of a mortgage. But I my point is that I think that once you figure things out, like once like I can put this much in and get this much out, I think that's a great time to scale, and that's a great time to use that in your favor. And I think that, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think lawyers like kind of use that lever enough. If they know they can pay whatever 8%, but they can get, X amount back. I just, we don't do a lot of math, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I think it really does come back to the math. I think I'm a nerd when it comes to numbers inside of I'm not a math whiz. That's not what I'm saying. Because I'm certainly not that.
I get you. That's awesome.
But that's
why people come to you.
If it makes sense on paper, then and you believe in yourself, which is a key thing, because some people don't yet. But when you do, and you're willing to have your own back, and you're willing to bet on yourself, and it makes sense from a numbers perspective, and there's no mystery, there's no gray, there's no fuzzy. You know exactly how long you need to recover it. You know, like all of that. Yeah. Then like I think utilizing I think debt can be a great tool. Absolutely. And I know not everybody agrees with that, but I think it can be a great tool to help lift yourself off the ground.
Absolutely.
But you know, I think there's a lot of people that probably take on debt where it's not clear and they don't know.
Yeah. That's
but that's not what you're talking about.
That is absolutely not what I'm talking about. Like I said, I don't think I won't say that. There are certainly people who might have the wherewithal and the knowledge to do it out of the gate. We didn't, we didn't, and I'm glad we didn't, because we did everything using our own savings, et cetera, et cetera. But, someone who was more savvy, or someone who may have run a business before, and you know what I mean, and they know these things, then they could easily take it on and build it just that much faster, is my point. Because now, it's always like I noticed, for instance, I was telling myself like, I want, 15. The larger you get, the more like you can't have this massive growth. At least that's what I was telling myself, it was kind of self-defeating. But, the larger you get, I remember looking every year, looking at the P&L, I'm looking and I'm like, how can I make that number get bigger faster? How can I make that number get bigger faster? And, and every time I'm like, we reach a goal, I was like, okay, the bigger the number got, I'm like, how can I make it move? I was trying to move it more and more, but in my experience of like, hey man, 25% growth was great, but I'm like, it's going to take a long time to get where I want to get. Right. And that's where I'm talking about when I'm talking about, well, two things. One, I stopped telling myself that. So I'm like, okay, hold on. Let me figure out, is there a way for me to like grow exponentially? I got to ask myself that question so I can start coming up with answers to that question. Right? Yeah. So that was one thing. That was the limited mindset part. And the second part is where the debt comes in, where I think that sometimes if you have something, you can use that debt and you can grow exponentially. Whereas if you're just doing this linear thing where you're just taking your money and then doing that and your money and doing that, then it's probably going to be more linear growth, even if it's good, healthy growth. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, there may be people who are just better at this than me that can do it exponentially with their own cash. Or if you get like some big, you manage to get some fees, but I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think you're totally right. I think you're totally right. Well, I think it's interesting. A lot of people I meet out of the gates, they haven't even experienced solid linear growth yet. And so it's almost like that's like the first thing that needs to happen. Fair. Because it forces you, in most cases, there's always exceptions to these rules, but it forces you to get your house in order, so to speak. Like you can't grow past a certain point if your systems aren't good enough. And so your clients are pissed off because they're dealing with slow, clogged up systems in your business. And so like it almost forces you to get that a little tighter, not perfect, because there's no such thing. And the more you grow, you have to change all your processes because you're growing. So like just kind of tightening everything up. And then you get yourself to this level where you see this consistent growth. Sure. And like, I have one client right now that's about where they are. There's some things they need to work on in terms of having a profit, but they have tightened things up. They're doing really well. They're growing at like a 37%. They grew at 37% this last year, which is awesome. Yeah. And they do have hopes of like opening a second location it's almost like you can feel that it's like just about that time for them to like put their foot on the gas and go for it because, and so I don't know if that's the way you would explain, like, did you have linear growth and then you were like, okay, now let's see what we can do. Like, let's punch it up.
I did. I have what we haven't discussed, and this is kind of like a side thing, but I have a separate firm that's a mass torts firm that we started last year, like January 1. I think like we had gotten everything in place, and I have two other partners for that. That's a different avenue of where we want to grow in the future. But yeah, we had linear growth. Part of this is when it's just me and her, like there's no other, there's no partners and stuff. The decisions can be made very, very easily. We can make them over lunch. We can make them at dinner. We can do it over the kids playing or something like that. Decisions are very and there's kind of this division where she knows I like this stuff and I'm good at it. And I know she likes this stuff and she's good at it. And it's just kind of like, let me know. It's not like a huge, there are certain things where we're like, I want to go left, I want to go right. And there's no one to, we just have to talk it out and figure out who's more passionate about going, where are we going to go take this thing? But that is such a rarity. It's such a rarity. Most of the time it's kind of like, okay, I think that's a good idea. Or, you know what? If that's what you want to do, go right ahead. That tends to be most of the time. So I don't know. I lost my track somewhere along there.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, I think you were saying like you did have some linear growth.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So we had linear growth, and then I just kind of asked myself, like, even if we're growing at 20% a year or 15, and number one, like I said, the bigger the number gets, the harder it is to keep that kind of growth. We were having
totally. Yes.
But, I just asked a different question. Literally, I just posed it to myself that I said, "Look, is there any way that instead of us growing linearly, we can grow exponentially? Like, how long would it take if I just wanted to double that number? Like,
yeah."
And I just said, I'm gonna give myself 30 months. I didn't want to say 3 years. That seemed like too long. I said, just give yourself 30 months and you figure out how you can just double that number in 30 months. And that's your goal, Damon. So,
cool.
Yeah. And that is.
Are you still in it or did you already surpass your 30 months?
I just started. This was like something we did this year. Like this year, I was kind of like, I'm tired of like just growing linearly. I just, so I'm at the very beginning stages of it. That is part of the reason why we're going into a new market. That's part of the reason why, we're getting another building in Norfolk. That's part of the reason why we're hiring 4 or 5 new people. We're also opening an office I have a strategy for it. So the strategy was we were going to move into Northern Virginia, which actually they write the most tickets and stuff of anywhere in the state. So we just don't like traffic. That literally has been the reason why we have never opened an office there, because I typically I'm the one that opened the office and I have to go back and forth, and I hate Northern Virginia, DC traffic. So I'm just going to have to bite that bullet for the sake of the for the sake of the firm.
For the sake of your 30
for my 30-month thing. So the strategy was open an office there, and go into that market, and you should be able to grow and open this office in Norfolk and go on television and all that kind of stuff. And I had already started working on the mass tort stuff. So we represent, thousands of clients in mass torts as well. And I think with these 3 things that I'll see, I'll report back once we've doubled it. And I feel very confident that I can meet my goal.
Yeah. That's awesome. I don't even remember where I heard this, but someone talking about, they weren't talking about it as concisely as we are, but there's linear growth that we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And then they talked about quantum growth. Like once you flip a switch, which I think how brilliant of a question to ask yourself about how can I exponentially grow this? Yeah. How can I double this in 30 months? Like those questions, because truthfully, let's just say, which you're not gonna, but let's just say you fall short. Absolutely. Is that a fail? No. Hell no. You're going to be so far beyond where you are right now because that's the way you were thinking. Exactly. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think those questions are good for anyone, no matter if you're new on the newer side of things or if your firm is smaller or if it's bigger. But I do think, and I feel like you're a living, breathing example of this. I do think there's a time and a place to ask yourself those questions. Like, I've had clients who, when we set their goals in strategic planning meetings, it's all about the math for me. So like, what revenue do you want to make? And we're working backwards from that to figure out how many cases do you need to bring in? How many cases do you need to close? All that. Mm-hmm. Well, there are times where they get conflicting advice from outside sources, which they can listen to whatever they want to listen to. I'm not Jesus here, but when the advice is make your goal just 10x period. Yeah. Well, if they're just starting and they said, they bring in, 10 cases a month. Yeah. Having a goal for 100 cases a month is crazy. Like that's not, it's going to be deflating, but in like shooting for that in 30 months, I get that. Yeah. But like turning around and so I think it's important that whoever's listening to this, like this is how it seems like the journey you've taken is super appropriate, meaning like you've gotten to this point where you've had enough growth and enough success in your growth to start asking yourself for real, like exponential questions and betting on yourself to follow through with them. Whereas someone who's just newer and they are still getting systems into place and they are still like, ask yourself those questions because it forces you to think bigger. Sure. But don't set goals that are going to be deflating because you're just not in a place where that's going to happen tomorrow, right? Like, I don't know. I think...
No, I know what you mean.
But I think there's a lot to be learned. And I think I love that you asked yourself that question. Because again, even if you fall short, you're not going to be pissed at the end of it all. Oh, you're just... No. It's just something that feels fun to strive for. Absolutely. It sounds like to me anyway.
Oh, no. It's a ton of fun.
And you have to do things you don't know how to do. And you're going to have to figure all that out. And you're going to have to drive through traffic that you hate for 30 months. All like you have a strategy, a real strategy towards it.
Absolutely. I feel so good about this. It could all blow up in my face, but I feel very good about it. I think I think what I'm trying to do is a good thing. It's a good thing for my family. It's a good thing to help more clients. It's a good thing for our team and building the team. And, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it. It's funny. You were talking about that. I remember at the beginning, when we were seeing like this growth, even month over month, we were like growing so fast and we were just trying to both my wife and I were just going full out, like, and I remember we had all these things like, when we make X amount, we're going to do this. Like these were just things that we would just say amongst us. Like, okay, when we do this, we're going to go do this. And when we do this, we'll do that. And we made every one of those goals. I don't think we did any of those things because that really wasn't, you know what I mean? That really wasn't what it was about. It was just about like, just getting like, excited about chasing this thing, so it's like
totally.
And one day we kind of, I don't remember it was her, but I remember we looked at each other and was like, hey, we never did like all this stuff. We said we were going to do this and this, and we're like, yeah, we did say that, but and that's not the fun part of it,
Well, I was just going to ask, would you say you guys are having fun? I know not every day is fun, but
Yes. We are I think we're having a lot of fun. I mean, I know I talk to people who have firms much larger than ours, teams of 100 people, this, that, and the other. Keeping track of 30, keeping everything moving in a team of 30 to me is difficult. But it's a ton of fun because just
like you wouldn't have it any other way.
No,
it sounds like
no. Yeah, I want us to be multiples of the size we are now. The only day, at this point, I'm just looking at runway. Like how long do I want to do this? Do I want to do it for 10 more years? Or I don't want to do it forever. So now it's just a matter of runway. Like you got 10 more years. I remember a long time ago, hopefully my wife won't get mad about this. So a long time ago, we were sitting down at our financial planner's office, and they ask you this question about like, when do you want to retire? Because they're just like you said, they're doing the math. They're saying, okay, well, how much do you need a month? When do you want to retire? We're going to say this is how much you have to put in the bank. And and so he asked that question of me, and I just told you I'm 8 years older than my wife, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. I honestly would like to do this until I keel over, but that changes sometimes. That changes sometimes. So I don't know what I said. I might have said like, I don't know. I'll probably do this until I'm 65. Not necessarily, but having my fingers in it. And he looks over to my wife and he's like, when do you want to retire? And she's like, when he retires. Like, I'm not going to let him retire and I'd be going to work every day. And I'm like, okay, good point, man. Because that could be like another 8 years or something. So I don't know, man. We'll see. But other than just sheer runway in terms of when do you want to be done with this. And I never really, now I'm starting to think about those things. This hasn't been a big thought of mine before now, but I read some article the other day that was talking about, I don't remember the age. I want to say if it was maybe it was 65. Basically, it said that, it was a huge jump between like a 10-year period when you retire. Like people who retired at like 55 lived for like another 30 years or 28 years or something. And people who retired at 65 live for like another 3. It was something. I'm going to find the article and send it to you. They were talking to a lot of people who had worked at like Ford and GM and that kind of stuff. So they were probably kind of physical jobs. But they were talking about like people who pushed themselves beyond when it's time to like check out. But people who kind of did it on the early side. It was an interesting article, and it was based on a study or something. So anyway, that's a totally different conversation. but a thought about like the same thing with that older gentleman that was 65 or 60 something. He's thinking like, do I want to make all these changes to grow this thing exponentially if I'm retiring in 3 years and I'm doing well as it is? Maybe not. But, if you're 35 or if you're 30 and you're getting started, you're going to be doing this for 20, 25 years. So you can go do whatever you want to with that, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Do you think, I have this, I guess I could call it a theory. I feel like I have enough proof for it, but I'm not a scholar. So do you think that part of what makes it, even though sometimes I'm sure it feels messy sometimes, it kind of feels chaotic, everything going on. Sure. Do you think that clarity around strategy and clarity around numbers? You just hired a CFO, you mentioned. So like clearly you value clarity around numbers.
Absolutely.
Do you think if you didn't have those things that this would not be fun? Like, do you think because you really understand some pieces or you have visibility into some pieces?
Yeah, I think that's certainly part of it. I also think that some people just don't. I think that's part of it. But haven't you run across people who just don't like to run a business? Like that's just, especially lawyers. I'll say specifically lawyers. There are some lawyers who are they become they prefer being practitioners to lawyers, and they become they kind of by default run their own law firms. I want to say like kind of by default because they don't want to work for other people. Maybe they can't command the salary at a certain time in their career unless they do it themselves. So I agree. There's also, I guess I'm kind of more on the mindset side of it that some people just want to put on the blind. They're like, I just want to be a great lawyer. But I think those people can certainly hire like director of operations and COO. Like they can still build and scale. There's, I can cite a bunch of people who are the best trial attorneys in the country who also have fantastic law firms. And I can guarantee that, they probably look at the metrics and this, that, and the other, but they're not, knee deep in the day-to-day activities, but they find people
totally.
who can.
Yes. I guess the reason I'm asking that is because I talk to a lot of attorneys and a lot of them are super stressed. Like they're not having fun, and I think it's because they are so busy lawyering and they do want to grow a business, but there is at the beginning, it's tough to, or not even at the beginning, just until you decide, right? Until you decide that you're going to deliberately spend more time on the business. I think it's heavy. And so, but then once you start to improve in terms of learning the numbers behind the business and understanding what levers are like necessary to pull,
Absolutely.
and also feeling like you have clarity around at least a plan for moving forward.
Absolutely.
Even though it never goes as planned, but you need a plan. And so it almost seems like when people get those things, their stress levels improve, or their frustration improves, like their life improves.
Absolutely.
And I was going to see if would you agree with that? Like if you didn't have the visibility, would you be a different person because it would feel not as clean, not as certain, not as, I don't know. What
I agree with you. I think the more, it's kind of like predictability. You have a certain amount of predictability when you know everything and how it works together and this, that, and the other. And it probably is just human nature that when you don't have that predictability, it causes stress. Like you are stressed if you don't know if you can make payroll next, you know what I mean? Or where am I going to get my next? I mean, that was, I vividly remember this. It kind of goes along with what you're saying. I vividly remember the first day of coming to the office and the firm. Remember, my wife had been running the firm for about 2 months. I mean, we were doing it at night, and I was leaving work and handling cases and stuff for that 2-month period. But the first day, I kind of was like, I'm gone, and I started at what we were building. I remember sitting down at the desk and looking around, and I said, hey, look, my job is just really to make sure that there is a constant stream of people coming in that door to hire us. That's my job. I can do a great job at lawyering. I could be the greatest lawyer. But if there are not people coming in that door every day willing to pay me for our services, then this is going to be for naught. So I pivoted. I looked, and I remember I'm a big Dan Kennedy fan. Are you read Dan Kennedy?
I love Dan Kennedy.
Okay, all right. So I'm a big Dan Kennedy fan. And it actually, I went looking. This is my first day there. I went looking, and I found it was actually a Bill Glazer book, but it was just like a freemium to get you in the funnel and whatnot. So I read the book. I think it's called Outrageous Advertising. I could be wrong, but I read the book, got in the funnel, became a member of GKIC like the next day or something. It was a member for years. I got their newsletter and stuff. But the point is that it's that predictability of knowing that what I'm doing is working, knowing that if I send X amount of letters, X amount of people will hire us, our average fee is X, our gross is going to be this, our operating expenses are this, and then I don't have to feel like, are me and my family going to be out in the street?
Like you're just at the whim.
At the whim of whether. And that is why I could never buy into the argument that, I'm doing something bad by advertising, because I'm like, I even know people who, and we talking about weaknesses and places we can improve. We could improve our firm if we increased our referral rates from, other professionals and stuff like that. It's literally been nothing I paid attention to, because it was always my passion to be like, I don't want to depend on if somebody gives me a referral. I don't want to be, not to say that I know there's people who build an entire, I have a very good friend who has a successful practice built 100% on referral, and hats off to him. It's just not my thing. It would make me feel uneasy if I was dependent on referral business for everything I do. That's what I prefer to advertise and create my own clients, and then everything else is just gravy. If I can build up better referrals, if I can build this. But anyway, I don't want to get too far off of the question, but I feel like I said that only to talk about like that idea of like that consistency and kind of knowing. And I think that helps you not be so stressed out and not be so like, oh my God. Cause I would be stressed if I didn't know, how I was going to make payroll next week or this week.
Right.
This week. That would stress me out.
And I think, well, I know from having conversations, a lot of people, they know there's money coming through the door or in the door. And so but they don't know exactly what's going to be left over after all their expenses are paid. And that is stressful. And they just haven't set up their business in a way at that point where, I mean, the lawyering is heavily on them. And so it's hard to do 2 full-time jobs. And so I totally get it. I just thought it was a good question for you, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are stuck in a bit of a rut and are frustrated and are not the best version of themselves for their families, for their clients, for their team, because they're so stressed. And like, it's human to be that way. And I think those same people are the ones, when I talk to them, they don't know their numbers. When I ask certain questions, it's like, I don't know. I could ask my bookkeeper, and that's fair. Someone's got the numbers, right? But also, like, there's a better way. There's a better way to build and a better way to live. And I think that the reason I love attorneys that go out on their own so much is because there's a lot of, like, that's not what you were taught in school how to do. So there's a lot of passion. There's there's a real reason you're starting your own thing. Absolutely. And there's a flame inside of you. And I think when that starts to peter out because you're tired and you're frustrated, it can all shift. It can all be back to what you had in mind. It just takes a little bit of work and education for yourself to get yourself to the place where you're handed reports every week that give you the knowledge you need, or that just start to demand things that are going to help educate you so that you feel more clear. And even if you don't like the numbers, at least you know the numbers.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Of course. You want to know them. You don't want to put your head in the sand, right? And say, oh my gosh. No, I think that's wonderful advice. I took business courses in college and but it wasn't until I really started, peeling over our balance sheet, looking at.
That's how you got your degree.
I mean, really. I mean, it was, it was just, I don't know. It wasn't. Maybe it's because the numbers meant something. It was something behind them. They were real. They were like, these are real numbers. That's how much is in the bank account. That's how much, your payroll, and this is what your, labor expenses are running a percentage. I don't know. I keep track of those, and you have to keep track of that stuff, especially if you want to grow and you want to know how much money is left over, and you want to, try to start building some wealth and that kind of stuff. So it's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you find with your clients that is like, I don't know. I don't want to say is it typical. I mean, is it common? I guess was my question.
Super common. I mean, now I've even changed how I work with people. I used to just work with people if they really loved the idea of signing up, because I would do an annual strategic planning meeting and quarterly meetings after that, to on track, off track, new goals for the next quarter, and all that was great. But in order to have that strategic planning meeting at the front end, I have to get a ton of data, because I can't. Like, you got to know where you're starting from. Sure. And what I started realizing is that they don't have, it took forever to get the statistics that I needed, or the data that I needed for me to be able to form the statistics, because they just didn't know it. And I had literally zero judgment on that. For me, it's about, I just have fun being in the numbers, like I call the tracking portal we have the source of truth. Like, let's get that source of truth put into place, and then we can look at it and then we can decide what bridges we need to build. Sure. And so I love it, but I think, you realize when someone first talked to me about signing up, you would hear a lot of excitement because they wanted clarity for the future.
Awesome.
But when they realized what it was going to take to be able to get that clarity for the future, then you start feeling all their stress. Then it comes out. And then when you get their numbers, and sometimes you realize, like, there's no cash left over. And so now I work with people in phases. Like, phase 1 is just getting all your data, getting it into a tracking portal, and doing an analysis to figure out, like, what kinds of things might make sense for based on your vision. Right. And then if they want to do the strategic planning meeting, we could do that. Cause I was just finding that people were getting themselves into these commitments, I think, because they wanted their business fixed, and I can't fix your business. And so now it's like, okay, we're just going to do step 1. And if after that, you still like me, you still like what I have to say, and I think, like, we both agree this is a good fit, then you can commit to phase 2 if you want to. And then we can commit to some execution help and accountability after that if you want to. And it feels much more lightweight. Awesome. And I think it helps reduce, the sticker shock isn't there because they're not paying for the whole year.
Sure.
And And it's a little more lightweight where they can enter in and just, if we stop after phase 1, they have only gained, because now they have a portal that tells them all this stuff. And so it just feels like, I wasn't trying to be out of integrity beforehand, but now it feels like we're just getting more and more in integrity with how we work with people, because, you'd get 3 months into working with someone and realize like they should not be, I know I can help them, but they need to get their house in order before they're paying me what they're paying me. And so now it's like, okay, we can enter into with way more visibility. But to answer your question, I do that's partially why I changed it, was because when all their stress would come out, there's stressed people are not always pleasant.
Sure.
They are, they're super scared. And so all that fear comes out, and then it's like, you got to deal with all the fear. I don't mind. I think the growth journey in its entirety is fascinating and fun. And I want to help it as much as I can with all the parts, emotional, mental, and the numbers. But it's just like, I think what I realized is that fear, the fear that happens because they don't understand the numbers side of the business,
mm-hmm.
or they don't work on the business the way that they could.
Yeah.
I think that is such a driver in how they act, how they operate, how they show up with me, how they show up with their teams, with their families. And I just thought, I'm not helping because they're paying me what they're paying me every month.
Yeah.
I'm kind of adding to their stress. And so so I think I'm trying. So yeah, I do. I feel the stress of people. Sometimes they're in denial, but most of the time, like, we're all human, and it is stressful when there's not predictability. I love that's the word you used. Like when things aren't predictable, it's scary.
Yes.
And especially if you have a family to take care of, and especially if you have a team to pay, like
Sure.
I do. I feel it a lot. And I wonder if that will shift, the bigger and bigger the businesses that I work with,
mm-hmm.
they probably have some of that in line.
Yeah.
But the businesses million, like right at that, where they're doing about $1 million. This is where it's almost like it's all coming to a head because their business is getting bigger and it's getting away from them. And so then that all the stress comes out. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
that's a good stage where you really have to, you want to start really paying attention to the numbers, and you can really kind of look and see, how should I be deploying this? Can I deploy this capital here and kind of get a better return, a better ROI? And that's
I will say, for me though, it's just as fun for people who come that, even if things are a hot mess behind the scenes,
sure,
or someone who comes where they've got a pretty good hand on it, they just want to optimize everything. Like both of those for me are super fun because it's just
awesome.
Whatever.
That's why you do what you do. That's awesome.
Yeah, love it.
And one of my friends works with you, and she says nothing but great things about you. And I know she has worked with some other people in the past and hasn't been as happy. And hopefully, I'm not divulging anything. I hope you guys aren't about to have some big negotiation about prices.
That's hilarious.
But I will say that we've known each other for a while, and I know she's worked with some other people, and she specifically said like this is different than all the other people that I've worked with.
Gosh,
and,
that's so cool.
She was supposed to show me something, some screenshots of some dashboards and stuff, but we haven't gotten there yet. But she had nothing but great things to say about the help that you gave. So I just want to share that with you.
Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. I think I know who you're talking about, and I feel like I'm her number one fan.
Awesome.
Not because she doesn't have other fans in her life, but I really do. There's a book called Skin in the Game where it talks about it talks about just how important it is to have skin in the game with your clients for certain types of service providers. And I genuinely, everything is more fun when you feel like you've got skin in the game, when you feel really invested. I know that their businesses aren't my responsibility. I'll never take that on, but I do think that, I root for them so hard because it's so fun. I think if I just sat at my desk and, saw their tracking portals and took some notes on like, oh, maybe we should talk about this stuff. No, like I want to be in it. I want to know what is going on. What's your struggles? Like, let's keep tackling the barriers so that I just think it's fun. So anyway, thanks for saying that.
No. I mean, it shows that you care. It shows that you're passionate about what you're doing. It's just, I am also a fan of your podcast. I wanted to make sure I said that as well because I've been listening. And,
that's awesome.
And yeah, so I consider it an honor to be considered to talk to because I know there are tons of people who run better firms than I do. Wow. So thank you.
I so appreciate you coming on. This has been such a blast to chat with you about all things. And maybe sometime we could do round 2 because there's stuff we didn't get to, but I know it's
you can go ahead. I was just saying that to get it out there. If you have some other stuff to get to, feel free. I'm cool.
Well, I think if you just promise to come back on.
I absolutely promise because I want to, this is a little bit of accountability for me, right? So
there you go.
I want to come back so I can say, we knocked it out the park or we fell a little short, but I feel very confident. I'm going to say we knocked it out the park and we settled. Yeah. So I feel bad. Someone the other day, because I know everybody is like different in terms of their ideas about growth. Someone the other day said, I finally reached this goal that I made like 3 years ago. And I'm like, that's awesome. Now double it. And I'm like, that's really, you should, sometimes people just want to enjoy things like chill, dude. Yeah. So my thing is I want to get there so I can be like, now let's see if we can do it again.
Yes.
So yeah, but I like the accountability factor.
Well, and you think it's fun? It's fun.
Yeah.
Like keep pushing.
Yeah. You never know we limit ourselves in terms of what we can accomplish, don't we? I mean,
yes.
Frequently, we limit ourselves in what we can accomplish. It's really just us kind of breaking out of a particular mindset to try to, because, and sometimes it's just slow. It's like, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah.
That's all I mean, and then when you reach that, you're like, it's like all of these athletes, like, nobody ever ran the X amount, that was 4 minute mile or something. Then as soon as one person does it, it's just everybody, the floodgates come open. It's like, y'all could have did that last week or last year, but now it's kind of like the mental barrier is lifted. So,
and you see someone else who's done it.
Exactly.
That's partially why I was pumped that you were willing to come on here, because I do think, I know one of my clients has ambitions to open. She wants 5 locations. And, I think it's, you are a shining example for a lot of people of what's possible. And I know you have people you look up to that are shining examples of what's possible for you. Absolutely. And so I think it's great to have conversations with people who are, you're not done. You haven't arrived at some pinnacle. You just want to keep going. But you've done something that a lot of people want to do. Or maybe they thought that they didn't because like all the headaches that might come with it. But listening to your story, like it depends on why you want to build what you want to build. Like, absolutely. Like you're willing to deal with some of those headaches because of your why.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot to be said that the problems change, but there, you could make arguments that it does get easier the larger that you get because you have, you can hire more. You basically can hire experts at their, I'll be very happy to hire like an HR expert. Like we don't have an IT person on staff. I'm looking forward to when we get to a point where I can just hire the IT person. We contract with them. I feel like they're there every day. I probably,
yes.
At some point in time, I'll look at that line and be like, is it time to hire someone? But you know what I'm saying? Like there are certainly great things that I think come with scaling your business. So anytime.
And it allows you, because the bigger you get, and as long as you can afford to pay, like that's but once you pay someone to do certain aspects or people who are experts in certain pieces of the business, it allows you to focus on what you enjoy. So it really does get easier. There's new problems that come up.
There's new problems. Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. And I have a coach, which took me a while to wrap my head around this, but I've been thinking about more and more about it lately. she's blown her business up. And talks like she keeps raising the bar for her goals, and talks about this idea that she realized at some point, like it's all 50-50, which I would argue, I think it's more than 50% in terms of happiness, but she's like 50% feels really good in life and 50% doesn't. It doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what you're dealing with. Like there's always the 50% that's like not fun to deal with, or it's, it's just part of it. I'm like, that's super, because I think people try to set goals because they think it's going to be better there than here. Yeah. And her whole thing is like, it's really not, it's different, but it's not better necessarily. Like, anyway.
I'm sure, when we think about it, I'd love to wake up tomorrow with like Warren Buffett's bank account. But I bet Warren Buffett, has an argument with his wife from time to time, or has an issue. Yeah, I mean, he's human. He's human, and he has human problems, and so do all the rest of them. So I get it. I think I understand what you mean.
And she say, because people will say, well, then why, if it's not better there than here, then why are you shooting for the moon? Like, why are you trying to, like, she's going to do 25 million this year, and she's like, awesome. Well, because that's what's fun to me. Yeah. Like, I can either sit in the same spot I'm in right now forever and just be 50-50 here, or I could be like seeing what I'm made of and be 50-50. And so like, I would rather see what I'm made of. Absolutely. Yeah.
Did you play sports coming up? Or where did your competitive nature come from? Or that just
I always really competitive with myself. So I ran cross country.
Oh, okay.
I did. I was on a dance team for years and tumbling and cheerleading and all that. But awesome. I don't know. There's always been like I've run some marathons. I remember the first time crossing that finish line. It was so overwhelming that it wasn't a 4-minute mile, awesome. but you realize like you could do anything. You could do anything if you make a plan. And you work the plan, and even if it doesn't turn out exactly how you thought, there's times where thresholds are crossed where you realize that it's not rocket science. It's just one foot in front of the other, and a belief in yourself. And
absolutely, I've always thought that I wasn't playing college. I always thought that the experience of just like being in sports and like challenging yourself and being like physically exhausted and like having to do things, I always thought that they were benefits. I thought they were benefits to maybe sometimes when I see people who haven't kind of went through that stuff, that they're just trying to figure out if they have like a little bit more gas in the tank, or can they push it a little bit further. So in cross country or just like long distance running, you definitely learn something about yourself when you do those things. You have to, normally there's a point where you have to dig deep and see if you can push through it, but you do. And then when you do, you, like you said, you feel like, oh my gosh, it happened. Like I can do this. So I like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for coming on. This has been super fun.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited. I like long podcasts. Like I listen to the Tim Ferriss interviews and the James Altucher interviews. I love that. I can't always listen to them in one sitting, but
I get it.
And so I usually try to keep mine short, but sometimes there's reasons to make them longer. And so I hope people actually listen to the end of this, because I think this was awesome. So thanks for coming on.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Anything you ever need from me or anything I can do, don't ever hesitate to ask.
Same. All right. Okay. Thank you. Hi guys, it's me again. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it, and I hope you did, please subscribe so that you get real-time updates whenever we drop a new episode. If you want to continue to hang out with us, come on over to our website and check out how we work with clients. It's our signature 3-phase approach that we use with law firms to achieve growth on their own terms. Head to velocitywork.com/begin for information about those 3 phases and how you might get started if you'd like. Again, that's velocitywork.com/begin. If there's a topic you'd like covered on a future episode, or a question you have, or someone you'd love to have interviewed on the Velocity Work podcast, go to speakpipe.com/velocitywork. Leave us a voice message there. It can be anonymous or not. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to hang out with us on social, come on over to Instagram. Our handle is velocity.work. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/meetvelocitywork. Cheers, my friends, to real growth and a great life. Bye, guys. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.